All right, bienvenidas. Welcome again to Serving Latinx Populations in Primary Care Behavioral Health webinar. I'm Jairo Kendo. I'm one of the task leaders alongside with Natasha Pérez Vale, and Natasha is our presenter today. One of our presenters. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about her. Before that, I would like to tell you that we try to have our webinars or monthly conversations on the last week of every month, specifically on Wednesdays. So make sure that you are included in our base camp and that you're checking our communications so you can join our conversations. March, it's a very different month. So instead of having a webinar, we'll be having a community conversation about language justice. So you will receive those notifications so you can join. It will be on March 15, it's a Tuesday next month, at noon Mountain Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So I'm going to also be posting my email here, so you're welcome to email me in case that you have more questions about our group, and you can find us in Basecamp. So now I have the pleasure to introduce the topic for today, which is mentorship for Latinx, empowering the process. And we have two presenters. The first one is Dr. Natasha Pérez Vale. She completed a PsyD in clinical psychology from Ponce Health Sciences University in Puerto Rico, and a postdoctoral fellowship with an emphasis in primary care psychology at Salud Family Health Centers, which is a large federally qualified health center. Her clinical work has been focused on health psychology and primary care, where she has worked with general population. She has a particular interest in the pediatric population, HIV/AIDS patients, and the deaf community. Her work has aimed to promote management and compliance of different medical conditions and to promote health prevention and provide holistic care to the Latinx population as part of the multidisciplinary and integrated care team. And I have to say that it has been a pleasure leading a SLP for the past month with Natasha. So I'm happy that she will be our presenter today, especially for this fantastic topic. Marta Saucedo, she doesn't need much introduction because everybody know how fantastic Marta is. So, but however, I'm gonna tell you that she is from she had a master's in social work program in 2019 and obtained her licensed clinical social work in 2013 after immigrating from Monterrey, Mexico, where she obtained a degree in psychology. Since 2018, she has been working as a behavioral health consultant at Access Community Health Center with a Latinx community liaison position, which is extremely needed for our community. Working in the community to help understand mental health in the Latinx population. And that it's one of the big topics that we cover here in SLP, the particularities of our Latinx community. Marta was an assistant professor in the master program in social work. And it says here, teaching, working with race and ethnic groups in social work. For the last 5 years, Martha has been a strong advocate in the Latinx community, working towards equality, educating the community, and providing mental health services. She is part of the Latino Health Council and the Latinx Mental Health Coalition. She was involved through the University of Wisconsin in a program called Fortalezas Familiares, which support Latina women struggling with depression and providing a family approach program with the goal to expand this in the school and training school staff on it. Martha is recently the project manager for technical assistance and strategic development at CFHA, so that's why you see her name all over, where she puts together her years of knowledge and experience in integrated care model, diversity, and teaching skills. I'm very happy and very proud to introduce these two incredible Latina women who will be talking about mentoring today. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Gaia, for that nice introduction of both of us. Welcome, everyone. I'm gonna start sharing our slides here in regards to mentorship for the Latinx empowering the process. And I think I'm gonna read the objectives and all that, but I just wanted to highlight that please put in the chat any questions that you have or comments or know yourself, as it's a small group. So happy to make it like a conversation with a friend, like una plática con las amigas today. So, Jada, do you want to start? I mean, Natasha, sorry. Yes, she came out with her name Jaira, and I just kind of put that.
Yeah. Well, hi everyone, bienvenidos. Thank you so much for being here today with our webinar mentorship for Latinx, empowering the process. Like Jaira said, I'm Natasha Pérez Vale. Today I would be with Martha, of course, who will be talking about mentoring for Latinx and Spanish speakers. And I will be speaking from my experience as when I was a student, an intern, and then a fellow. And as well, Martha would be from her standing point as in the working environment. So for our objectives of today, we're going to recognize different concepts about mentorship and issues that can affect a healthy process, the mentorship process. We're going to discuss, just like I said, mentorship from a perspective of training and a student mentee, and from a racial background, from a different racial background, and examine the impact that culture plays on mentorship experience in a working environment and a leadership position. So like I mentioned, our first objective, we want to have a quick grasp of the basic concepts, mainly because I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience. But when I was a student, when I was starting as a student and then intern and as a trainee, I didn't know the difference between mentorship and supervision. That I will talk about that in the next slide. But I didn't know about this basic concept. So a mentorship, like the word ship, it says it's a relationship between a mentor and a mentee, where the mentor is considered to have a knowledge in a specific or in your field of expertise, and they often have two primary functions: to work with the career related functions that would be in developing the professional career of the mentee, such as working with the CV, networking, interviews, career choices, that type of journey or path, but also to work with the psychosocial functions, difficulties that the mentee is going through with with life experiences that can affect the work environment, as well as adaptation to a new place and other factors that can come into play with that working environment and with the career path. And both of these different functions are going to have, bring into a balance between work and life. So the mentee can feel, could have that extra support in the career development. And then the mentee would be the person in the other end who would have the role as a learner. Okay. And like I said, I didn't, for example, when I was starting, I didn't know very much the difference between mentorship and supervision. In my case, I received a lot of supervision during my doctoral degree, and then an internship and the postdoctoral fellowship. So, well, mentorship, like I said, is going to be focused on support and guidance for the professional and career development of the mentee, while the supervision is focused in the assessment of the performance. For example, if the person is going to see patients, then it's going to be focused on the performance on underperformance in their clinical aspects. It's going to be this relationship with supervision is mutually evaluative because the supervisor is evaluating your work, but you as well is evaluating the supervision that you're receiving, and you're having this ongoing feedback. And the supervision as well has the goal of enhancing that professional competence and monitoring the quality of the service.
Good. So, and now I'm going to talk about, Natasha already kind of explained a little bit of the mentorship, but then there's this concept that I actually recently learned about, which is called sponsorship. And I want to be able to identify that difference. So like Natasha mentioned, the mentorship is going to focus to help that mentor and can provide direct guidance as feedback in the skills and coaching, right? But the sponsorship in the other end entails externally facing support such as advocacy, visibility, promotion, and connection. So I kind of did a list of different highlight things to kind of be able to differentiate this, as you can see here. So the mentorship, we mentioned it's going to be depending on the experience that the person that is going to mentor, it's going to guide the mentoree, right? They're going to support, encourage, help develop skills, and improve the performance. It's very straightforward. Like you have these goals and you work with that person. The sponsorship, in the other hand, it's more about reducing bias in particularly in vulnerable groups like the Latinx by highlighting the qualities of that person. I think for people who belong to these groups can understand that a lot of the times it kind of takes a toll, and you have to kind of to work harder to kind of to prove things or your valuable qualities compared to white groups, right? And a lot of the sponsorship is going to help kind of give a step ahead to someone who belongs to vulnerable groups, empower and promote that person in what they're doing, right? So I'm going to actually, once I kind of tell a little bit about my story, I'm going to explain more this and how you can see that difference. And I kind of add a quote that I really like from Heather Focus Cumming, which is a senior vice president of the nonprofit Catalyst. And she mentioned that a mentor will talk with you, but a sponsor will talk about you, right? So the mentor is going to help you do things, and the sponsor is actually going to highlight you and talk about you. And this not necessarily need to be, in front of you. That actually needs to happen a lot, when you're not around, in which that's going to help, reduce biases and kind of highlight qualities that maybe no one has seen, but the person that works very close to you can see. Now, while we are working with the Latinx community, we cannot deny that there are a lot of cultural factors that come into play. And it's important that we highlight this and we give that importance in any relationship, because we cannot hide those things. And what is the intersectionality between, a lot of those gaps and things that happen? So if you're coming from a vulnerable group, so the Latinx, it's a Latinx mentee, and then we add other factors. If it's a man or a woman, it can look very different, right? If that person has some difficulty with the language as well, it can add another kind of barrier. Now that doesn't mean that this person is not capable of doing things, because it comes from a Latinx group, and maybe English is their second language, and then they're woman, like I'm actually describing myself, right? But it does kind of build more like barriers or things that this person needs to work on, compared if someone comes from a privileged group in which they know the language perfectly. Maybe they're actually a man in which there's not that need to prove, that they can be in a leadership position, for example, right? So all that it's important for us to take into consideration, particularly when we're going to sponsor someone. The workplace culture has a lot to do. I have heard, and actually I was in a conversation last week in which when you are part of a workplace in which there's a lot of people like you, like a lot of, in this case, Latinx people or women, that can create a culture that can be very different if you're the only one person in a workplace that you're considered Latinx, right? So feeling minority or majority in your workplace can create a very different culture. And some places have very healthy cultures to cultivate and elevate everyone in their workplace without taking into consideration their cultural, their background. But there are other places, in the other hand, that can be very unhealthy. And it's important to recognize how that culture in the workplace is and how we can promote and help someone that comes from the Latinx group. One important thing is that if you are mentoring someone from the Latinx population, it's going to be very hard for that person to self-promote themselves. And it's important that we highlight this because this comes from a culture background. In our culture, it's very common in which they will teach us that you don't pride about yourself, because this can be, sound like cocky, or that, you should be humble, actually. So for someone who comes from that particular group, it's going to be very hard to self-promote themselves and actually, highlight themselves. We know that in this culture, in the white culture, is very easy, and it's actually something that you're invited to do. So I did this, I did that. So for example, Jaira was reading my bio. I started feeling like anxious just by her reading all that. I started feeling like uncomfortable, and I should not feel uncomfortable, right? Because these were things that I accomplished and I work hard for them. So I should feel proud of them. But I understand that these come from a background of a culture. So it's important that we highlight that it's hard for someone from the Latinx community to just, come outside and self-promote themselves. It's also hard to speak up from themselves as well. And mainly if they have been marginalized, or they have experiences in which they have speak themselves out and they were not taken into consideration, or right away they were like, no, you don't, we don't take in, we're gonna take your point of view or credit your point of view. So if that person has difficulties, had tried to speak up, and it has been be a barrier when that person speaks up, it's going to be really hard, like for example in meetings and groups, that person is going to be able to do it, particularly if they have experiences in which they were not able to make their voices being heard. And the values, it comes across to also what that person believes it's important for them, and how they're going to come across to present those in their workplace, or if they're doing their PhD or whatever as a student. So I think that if you are mentoring either a student or in your workplace somewhere from the Latinx community, that you have to take into consideration all these areas, because it doesn't come as easy for them to come and expose themselves or talk about themselves, or even ask you for things they need. So we have to be mindful that they're facing different like steps that they need to, kind of went up in order to shine, or in order to be themselves, or in order to be kind of at the same level as someone that comes from a group that is considered a majority. So we cannot deny that we're coming from a group that it feels marginalized sometimes, or that people have assumptions, and it's hard for us to fight those assumptions that people are having. And with that, I want to take you to our story. I want to highlight that the story that Natasha is going to share is going to look very different than mine. Natasha was in an environment in which it was already set up, and it was a program particularly for her. I talk about the culture of the workplace. In her place where she was being trained, the culture was to actually highlight qualities in someone like her, right? And she was being supported by someone like her as well, right? So She also faced some struggles that she's going to be sharing with you today, but her experience is going to be very different, in which a difference of mine, which I'm going to share my experience as well. I didn't came to a place in which the mentorship or the sponsorship was already settled. I actually had to figure out on my own. So, Natasha.
Thank you. Well, yeah, so I want to share my experience, my journey. As Marta said, I did went to a fellowship where I had a program of mentorship, but I wanted to explain to you a little bit since the beginning. So this is why I have my little bit sad photo of when I was doing my doctorate degree. And for me, this photo is very powerful. It's very important for me because I could see like a little bit of confusion in my eyes. And I could see like, I think I can explain everything that I was going through or thinking or feeling through this photo. So like Marta said, this is before I was in the fellowship and in the mentorship program. But in this particular moment, like it says here, I'm from the west side of Puerto Rico. I am first in my family to pursue a doctoral degree. And I started my racial identity journey around 5 years ago, but with my hair. But I didn't knew that I was in a racial identity journey. I just did it because I wanted, to know how was my hair, but I didn't have this space, nor in my family or in school or in my university. I didn't have the space to talk about this. So I went through all of these years just not talking about it and not being aware of it. And regarding to the topic of mentorship or mentoring, I only thought that mentorship was to students that were just outstanding, that they were exceptional on, on their specialty. I only thought that, because they were very good, then professors or mentors just took them under their wing. So I never thought about mentorship in the way that I know it today. And this photo also represents that I thought that my shyness, the being shy, I thought that, my fear of public speaking, I thought that everything was because of my personality, and I didn't even go even more further. Until then, after I finished my doctor's degree, I go to Colorado to do my postdoctoral fellowship. And there, my supervisor, at the beginning, my supervisor asked if I was interested in being in a mentorship program for Spanish speakers. Being with a mentor that went through a similar journey as me. So I was very excited because, like I said, I didn't know anything about mentorship. I really, like I said, I thought it was, for someone that was exceptional. And I was very excited because I knew I was going to need, the support, being in a new, getting for the first time out of Puerto Rico, being a Spanish speaker. But I didn't, again, I didn't know the topics that maybe we're going into. So here I try to explain it in these arrows. The first one were the topics that I thought that we were going to discuss, around the year. So I thought we were going to talk more about treatment models, integrated primary care model, the interventions or assessment. That was where my mind was at. But then throughout the year, I got to discuss topics as racial ethnicity, the adaptation to the new town, my anxiety, the relationship with my supervisor, which for me, I think that was great as well, because as a student, as an intern, as a trainee, you may, have difficulty of addressing this topic with your supervisor. And also as the acculturation process and the population served. Maybe another topic that it could be difficult to address with your supervisor, with mentorship, it helped me, navigate and how to discuss it also with my supervisor. So for me, it was very not only to the mentoring topic, but to a mentorship that it was designed for people like me. And it was thought for the struggles that I may have been dealing with. Also, I didn't mention when I started my mentoring process, my mentorship, meetings, with who was my mentor looked similar as me. She has similar skin tone. She had like similar hair, and for me that was a big thing as well. Like I could see her, and she had like similar, experiences personally and in the career path, the career development. So I also want to share a little anecdote to explain how the mentorship process was very good for me in the racial identity aspect. I like it says here, at first I had very difficulty understanding when topics were addressed about my color, about my hair. I didn't understand why was this important. Because I think that coming from Puerto Rico, we're all the same. Puerto Ricans are all the same. Blancos, negros, todos somos los mismos. We come from the three races, and we're a mix, and we're all the same. So for me, it was very difficult to understand why we need to talk about race. And so when I was an intern, I had the experience that a new patient came into the clinic, and a provider told me, oh, there's a new patient, but you should not see the patient because the patient is racist. And the other psychologist should see the patient. And at that moment, as an intern, I thought like, oh, like I took it immediately, like, okay, yeah. And I didn't like thought about it. Then in my fellowship, I think it was mid-fellowship or at the end of the fellowship, after having all these conversations and having this space where I, felt validated and could talk to someone about it. And I had the same experience. A provider told me again, there's this new patient, but you shouldn't see the patient. And I remember feeling differently. Like I remember like, oh, like this pause, like in the movies, like this pause, like this is the same situation. But I remember feeling differently, feeling more empowered, and saying to the provider, like, okay, so I'm going to see the patient, and then if the patient said something, because in both situations they didn't see me, they didn't say anything. So when I went the second time, I said like, okay, great, I'm going to see the patient. If something comes up, then I'm going to address it, or we're going to, to work on it, or whatever the situation may need. But it didn't happen, nothing happened. But this anecdote for me is very important because I felt the difference. Like I always think like I got like a second chance of working, something for myself and seeing it from another perspective, and not not taking that narrative from someone else and taking it as my own. I could see that understanding more of myself, and it's in the picture, knowing more about myself, so I can feel comfortable on the decisions or how I want to talk about myself, or anything, and not taking it from another person. So then with this process, I could see the importance of talking about this for myself, because it did really help me on like I said, to make those decisions for myself, and to have a voice. Like Marta said, at first for me it was difficult to speak up for myself. Each time that I wanted to speak, I was like very, no, don't say this because of that and that and that. But with this space, I felt very different, and I felt more empowered each time. As well, it was difficult for me that being surrounded by others that did not have the same fears or concerns with me. Like for many years, I thought that everyone felt the same, or I felt like them. But then I with these topics, I understood that they weren't being as concerned. So for me, it was important that I was seeing myself more unique, or with, more unique, or maybe, like more I think empowered is the word that I'm looking for. And like I said, having a mentor that looked at me as well, I felt understood and hopeful, because I was getting out of that first feeling that I had of that everything I am is because that's my personality. You know, this is me, this is Natasha, and I cannot change that. And in the meantime, I could see that I was changing a lot of things of myself for the good. And a really valuable lesson through it all was seeing myself as a mentor, as someone that has something important to share and to mentor others. At first, I didn't see myself at all as a mentee. And then, you know, in the process, I could see myself as a mentor. And for me, that was very, very valuable. And as a mentor, that was like a next stage and different other different ¿cómo se dice? Retos. So for me, being as a mentor, like I said, I was scared at first, but it helped me see that I had the experience, so I did have something to share. I learned as well to go with their agenda and not my insights, not only what I understood of my experience, but going with the mentees, what they needed of the process. And it helped me as well having motivation of providing what was given to me or what I learned to others. At the end of it, I wanted to keep on having this conversation and these spaces, so I created a group for early career psychologists, Latina women, that I named Growing from Testimonios. And it was, for me, it was great to have that other space and to continue the space and not leaving it there.
Great, thank you, Natasha. You know, listening, we both be meeting to prepare this session, and I knew a little bit of her story, but not completely all her story. And it's well, it's not surprising, but it just highlighted to me how similar feelings that she expressed reflect exactly how I was feeling in the workplace, and how she overcome those in a different way because she was in an environment with someone that looked so similar from her. In my case, I didn't have someone that looked similar from me, so it was a very different experience. So the feelings were the same, but the outcome was a little bit different. As you can see, I have a look that doesn't very much reflect being Hispanic, right? So I can easily be walking and people will think that I'm from the United States and born and raised here. But as soon as I start talking, that changed things because I have a strong accent, and then right away I cannot tell you how many times, if not every day, when I'm in a new environment and I start talking, people right away is like, where are you from, right? And that where are you from can be in a very acceptive way, or it can be in a very judgmental way. And it can go either way. And I really, as soon as I came here, even though I have knowledge of the language, so that was not a problem for me because I knew English when I arrived to the United States 20 years ago. And I didn't struggle with communicating myself, but I knew right away that because of my accent, I was an outsider. Like I was not part of a group that I could belong. And easily I was seen differently. And at that point, I think I just really didn't realize the impact that was going to create with me throughout the years of feeling an outsider, right? So then I started working in a place in which we were serving a lot of, so my Spanish was a skill for me because it was helping me to reach out a population that other of my coworkers couldn't reach out, which was Spanish-speaking persons. And I was feeling very comfortable in the room with patients that I was able to be in the same culture, and I felt like I was very helpful. But it was a very different story how I was feeling with white patients. They was very much in tune with Natasha's story. In my case, there was a time in which I came to see a patient and I introduced myself. And again, as I started talking, he realized I have an accent. He asked me where I was from. and he denied having contact with me that I will be able to help him just because I was Latina. And he requested me to, bring someone else to the room because he didn't trust my ability to be able to help him. And at that moment, like Natasha mentioned, is like, you're not expecting that. So it's like a pause, like, what the heck happened here? You don't know how to react, what to respond. And the emotions just start really bubbling inside of you. Because it's hard. It's hard to respond to a comment of racism, and in a way also be professional, because I have to honor what the patient wants in that moment, right? So it was a very hard balance. Of course, I talked it out with my supervisor, who is white at that moment, was white. And, I'm sorry, you have a lot of skills. And I think that person did their best to make me kind of process that. But I'm thinking that if it was someone of color who had experienced something similar, it couldn't be a very different approach, like Natasha mentioned, when she was able to identify herself with that supervisor, right? So throughout the years in my, I have to mention also that when I finished my degree in Mexico and I was working as a therapist, and I came here and I just couldn't work here because they told me that my degree didn't count over there. So that also felt like, well, wait, you're telling me that all those years that I, did over there, they're not counting here? So that kind of start all over again, go back to school. And I was the only Latina in my cohort, the only one. It was just white students, and probably 2 African-American students. But other than that, it was me. So I also felt very, like it says, an outsider, right? Because I was the only one coming already with a degree, needed to start another degree, and not being able to connect with any of my colleague students. I mean, with the students, I don't know how you call them, classmates, I would say, and be able to process if they were experiencing what I was experiencing. They were very nice to me, and I still am very friends with a lot of them. That was not the problem. The problem was that I didn't have no one to process things that will happen to me. And I started feeling that it was me feeling these things, that it has nothing to do with a system, but it was me feeling maybe that I was not worth it, or feeling that, oh, they can do it, but I cannot do it. Feeling insecure about the papers I was turning in at school, or feeling insecure about when I was seeing someone, English speaking patient, because of experiences that I had, experienced before. So then I start really walking on eggshells. And that's exactly how I felt, because I was in every circumstance, I was analyzing and checking how I was being perceived and how I needed to respond to the environment. I have to say, in general, I'm a peacemaker, which means I don't do well with conflict. I avoid conflict, right? So I don't want to be in conflict with anyone. So with that mentality of I want to have just peace with everyone, it was really me adjusting to everything and thinking it was me who needed to adjust to everything, right? In a sense that if they see me different, it's because I'm different. And if they're gonna treat me differently, it's okay, it's okay. So I started kind of owning how I was being treated and feel in a lot of ways. And that was a lot of accumulation of things that start building on me, which here's the accumulation of implicit bias, because I cannot express on words, oh, this is exactly the situation that happened. Like, for example, for the patient that told me that he didn't want me to take, continue working with him. That was a very specific thing. But a lot of the times the implicit bias is felt. Like there's no words to explain it because nothing happened. There was not a comment that it was coming to you regulatory or in a bad purpose, but you just feel the difference. You feel that you're treated differently. And that's the accumulation, like I mentioned there, implicit bias, right? Now, with that being said, there came a point in which I realized I was not myself anymore. I was adjusting so much to everything that I completely forgot of who I really was, to the point that I was really hiding my Latina part as a way of being proud. And that healing process started when I started feeling fake. I started feeling like I was presenting myself in a fake way because it was not me. And it really took a lot of insight and kind of going into and finding myself again. Because for many years, I was really just hiding myself and trying to adapt to this culture, who I immigrate here. And I really forgot of who I was and who I wanted to, and be proud of who I was as a Latina. So my healing process started when I actually started to make actually a list of all the things that make me proud of who I am, of my accent, or where I come from, all the things that I have accomplished, all the people that I have helped, and putting on aside those moments in which I didn't feel welcome here. And I mean here, the country. So I started, and I realized it was a process that I needed to do on my own. Now, no one was going to help me, right? It was nobody coming and apologizing for moments that I didn't feel welcome. It was really me, again, discovering myself, being proud of that, and highlighting that. And now coming to the world in a more authentic way by saying, yes, I am Latina. Yes, I have an accent. Yes, I have to do my degree again. And yes, I can help many people, and be proud of those things. And if you or a few think differently, they're entitled for your opinion, but I am worth it. I am worth it for who I am in a country that is different than me. And that creates a lot of strength to kind of immigrate, because it also that implication of everybody that immigrates come, as an undocumented and all those stories, right? So that healing process took years, and I'm still in that process, I have to say, because it's an ongoing process. I have to figure it out and identify people who I can trust in talking to these people that look like me, but also people that don't look like me, that I can buffer and kind of talk and process things. Sometimes I did mistakes in which I trust someone and then I felt it was not the right person. Like, it happens in everything. But I can consider myself right now being blessed to have people that I can trust from my group as a Latina and from my group as non-Latinos, that I can come and talk and openly express, things of my healing process. And then again, just every day it's a reminder for me to come across as myself and taking that risk and be okay with that. And I might receive, a welcome from everyone or for whatever I'm doing. I might not sometimes, but that's okay. I will still be my complete self, right? So that has really changed my way I present myself at my work, because I am more who I am. I am more authentic. I am more sure of what I'm bringing to the plate and being proud of it. I have to say, in that healing process, I really had to write down all the accomplishments I have to say that I have done and repeat it in the mirror many, many times. Again, going back to that culture piece that we should be humble, we should not talk about our accomplishments. I realized I needed to hear that from me. And I cannot tell you how many times, again, I wrote that script and I kind of put myself in the mirror and I start talking to myself to accept myself again and be proud of who I was. So that was kind of the journey in which I live it very differently than Natasha, because I had to discover on my own, right? So talking back about the learning points of this conversation, I just want to highlight that it's very different to be a mentor than to be a sponsor, right? And those two have to be hand in hand. If you really want to highlight someone in your team that comes from the Latinx, or you're a Latinx person, don't just be okay with being mentored, because it is known that we are mentored a lot, but very few times we're being sponsored, and those two need to be together, right? And I invite you to also mentor people and sponsor people. For example, I'm gonna give a very concrete example. Jaira introduced ourselves, and she did a lot of sponsor comments in her introduction, right? That's what it is. Like, she was highlighting our, well, this is a presentation, and she was reading our bios, but she was highlighting our accomplishments and even putting her own opinion of how much she trusted us to have this presentation. She was having a sponsorship moment there. So you can do it at any time. So be very mindful to have those together, not just be a mentor, but also be a sponsor. Be aware of the cultural components that we mentioned, the intersectionality, the values of that person, the cultural identity, the racial that you're coming from. They're always there. We cannot remove them. Like I mentioned in Natasha as well, it's going to be an on-day process for us to always heal. And if you are part of a white group, that it's a majority group, you have to acknowledge that that person is going through that process and honor that. It's painful. It hurts sometimes. There's tears sometimes. There's like, why? Like, sometimes you actually feel like, what I'm doing here, right? And then you start understanding, wait, it's not about me. It's a systemic issue. I cannot change that, but I can change how I react, right? But that takes a lot of time and awareness. And like I said, it's not easy. It's painful. Teach others about the importance of the cultural conscious, the implications of mentorship. If you're listening to this talk and you find later years someone that is mentoring someone from a minority group, share this type of information, because I think the more that we speak out about these things, the more we can help. A lot of the times I have found that I have people really well-intentioned around me, but they just don't know. They don't know that I need that help or that support, or that it's really hard for me to, kind of self-promote myself or things like that. But once I share that, oh, I get it. Now I know why you were acting this way, or you were so worried about that. And then they can help you. So be very conscious about that, and have open conversations. Allow your mentee to teach you as well. If you're in a leadership position, that's exactly where you actually have the power to mentor, to sponsor those persons in order so they can come to leadership positions and they can do the same that you're doing. So they can pay back to mentoring someone from, in this case, the Latinx community, but sponsor that person as well.
And another learning point is to pay it forward, to having that pay it forward mentality. Not only, like Martha said, it's painful. It could be a very painful process, but we can make something beautiful of it. We can share our insights and share our journeys, share what we went through, not because maybe someone is going through that as well and maybe needs to hear it as well, or to hear the options and the possibilities that we can provide. So I think that having this mentality of sharing it with others and as a community, see what else we can do, it's very powerful, because we can grow a lot from these spaces.
Yeah, I think you brought a great point, Natasha, that it's not that we're trying to share sad things here, but it's more like kind of open people's eyes and views, and then be able to say, you know what, I can create some change here. I can be someone that can not just be a mentor, but can be a sponsor and support this person. Or if you don't have that, seek that, and ask for that. It's not fun to ask, but sometimes you start to need to craft that path for yourself and for others, right? So I wanted to be mindful of time, and we have like 8 minutes before the end of the hour, but I would love to hear questions or comments. Yeah, go ahead. You guys can actually write it on the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself.
In the meantime, of people muting themselves or writing in the chat, I want to acknowledge how powerful your stories were, and thank you so much for sharing those stories, because of course it at some point came from vulnerable moments in your development. So I appreciate everything that you mentioned about your trajectory.
Yeah, well, I guess at this point, I think it's like an honor to share our, at least for me, our stories in a way that I also am proud of everything that has happened in my journey. So this is like a proud moment for me to say, I went through all that and here I am, right? And I grow so much and here I am. And so it's actually an honor to be speaking out loud about my story right now, because probably 2 years ago, 4 years ago, it wouldn't be the case. I was still in that kind of digesting things and I like, you know, checking where I was. So at this point, it's also a victory for me to be here today sharing my story in which, yep, I went through all that. And guess what? I'm stronger and I'm better and I'm myself now. So thank you all for, you know, listening.
And I'm glad that we're celebrating that for sure.
Yeah.
We have some comments here. Selena wrote, yes, thank you so much for sharing your personal experiences. And Norma, thank you, Norma, for joining us. How do you handle feedback with colleagues when you hear them miss something with a patient or use a stereotypical approach?
So let me see if I'm understanding this correctly. It is when your colleague, it's actually doing comments that are not, they have stereotypical approach. Is that correct, Norma?
Yes, sorry, I'm in clinic. I might get called for a warm handoff in a second. But yeah, so I know and this might sound bad, but it's kind of like popular right now to be like, yeah, diversity, and yeah, we're so inclusive. But then when it actually comes to like, oh, I need to tell you about something, then it's not well received. So I was just wondering, like, how do you approach that? Like, because
Yeah.
like being in a visit and like from your perspective,
Yeah.
seeing something that they're not asking and then they say something and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I bring this up with you?
Yeah, I guess, I guess in the workplace, you start, like I mentioned earlier, I have being able to identify people that I can trust. And sometimes they can guide me as to how to approach that. Because I'm a peacemaker, right? So I don't want to be in conflict with anyone. However, reality is that we need to get out of our culture component and being able to speak up and educate, because a lot of the times, like I said, it's good intention people, but they are not aware of what's happening, what they're saying. That's an automatically comment that can be offensive or not helpful, right? So what about for you, Natasha?
Yes, I definitely think taking it as a teaching opportunity to teach them, you know, what why do you think that that's inappropriate, or, you know, like Martha said, like helping them as well to see in it, because we're talking about, you know, healthcare and talking about a patient. So I think for me as a learning point has been not to, you know, leave the moment, because at the beginning I would like see it very, very far. So I try to be very aware of those moments and taking it as a teaching moment for the person.
I also have to add that, you know, each scenario can look very, very different. Like there's not a straightforward formula. as to how to react. It depends a lot of the space that you are, the people where you are, the environment, the situation. There's so many things that come into play. But the teaching part, I think it's clue. That's part of this webinar, actually. We're teaching others what is happening and how they can work when they're mentors someone from the Latinx community, right? So teaching is huge. And then really not allowing to kind of, be that on you, like bring it out either again with someone that you trust that you can process. I mentioned earlier that I did that for myself. I was like having all these experiences, but I was not processing with anyone. And at the moment I start actually realizing, hey, wait, no, I need to actually talk about these things and I need to work on those things. It make a huge difference.
And validating ourselves that it's gonna feel scary. Of course, it's scary sometimes to say something, to be that person that it's given the lesson, or como decimos regañando.
Yeah,
it's going to feel scary, but it's important. It's very important. It's important to see the big picture of it all, and why speaking up, it's important to do it at that moment.
Yeah, you mentioned something very important. You're right. It's important to find allies, right? And people that can support that. That's definitely a big component, for sure. Well, I guess we're on time here.
We are. The good thing is that we're meeting every month. Serving Latinx populations are meeting every month, and I hope to see all of you again. Invite other people who are interested in or who are working already with Latinx populations. And thank you again for joining, and thank you, Martha and Natasha, for the fantastic presentation about mentorship. Thank you so much for your contribution today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you everyone that joined us today. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.